Chickens love to dust bathe. It is one of their most favorite things to do in the whole world. So today, let's look at why they love it so much. A lot of people think that chickens dust bathing is to help them manage external parasites. And I thought that too, because when you go looking for information, or if you're not looking and it just pops up in books, on the internet, just wherever you happen to be seeing chicken information, that is what people are saying. They're saying that chickens are dust bathing so that they can get the external parasites off them. But that's not actually the main reason that chickens love their dust bathing so much. The main reason is so they can maintain their feathers. So what chickens do when they are preening, so that's the activity where they stand around, usually in the sunshine, and they manage their feathers. They put their beak through their feathers. And what they do is they run their beak across their preening gland, which is a little knob at the base of their tail. They put their beak on it, get some preening oil on their beak and run that through their feathers. And that helps to maintain their feather health. It helps to keep the feathers water resistant, weather resistant, and just generally keeps them healthy and looking great. And while the chickens are doing that, they can also have a wee look for anything that is stuck in their feathers. So things like that. Really important grooming activity. But as they're putting that oil over their feathers, as time goes on, that oil gets a bit stale and they need to put fresh new oil on. So what they do is they go and find their favorite dust bathing spot. They throw soil all over themselves, and that soil helps to absorb the stale oil, take it off their feathers. When they shake all of that dust off themselves, that stale oil goes with it, and then they have nice, clean feathers ready for them to reapply their fresh preening oil when they finish their dust bath and then sit around in the sun arranging their feathers carefully. Dust bathing is also a really social behavior for chickens. They love to do it as a group activity. So one of my favorite things that my flock likes to do is go out in the mid-morning when the sun is shining onto their favorite spots and just all in a big group have a dust bath and just preen their feathers, stand around, just generally kind of lazing around in the sunshine. And they have a bath, then they get up and wander around, and they might go back in and do it again. They really love doing it together. And it's absolutely essential for their happiness for them to be able to do that. Dust bathing is something that you absolutely must be sure that you provide for your chicken flock. They absolutely need it. Like, they need food, they need water, they need a safe place to sleep, and they need a dust bath. So really important to make sure that they have that opportunity. Now, one of the reasons why I say it is so important is because when I am watching a broody hen, when she gets off her eggs, she's in a real hurry to do the things she needs to do so she can hurry back to sit on her eggs again. And what she does when she gets up, in a great big flurry of feathers and noise, she gets up, she runs out, and she has water, she has food, she takes a poop, and she has a super fast, frantic dust bath. So that shows you that it is an absolutely essential activity for your chickens to be doing, because broody hens do not do anything that is not an absolutely essential thing for their health and well-being. And after she's thrown some soil over herself, quick shake, back to her eggs she goes. So it's really important. I make sure I always provide a spot for my broody hens to make sure that they can take their dust baths, or maybe I might let them out of their pen so they can go to their favorite spot and do it, because it is that important for their health and well-being. Chickens, of course, love to do the same activities in the same spots over and over again. And you can check out the video, Creatures of Habit, to learn all about that little quirk of chicken behavior. But dust bathing is no different. They love the same spots, such as this spot where the chickens have made a giant hole in my lawn, or any garden bed that they have access to, or this spot where my mama hen and her chicks love to hang out. So what about parasite management? Does dust bathing actually help? Well, that is a really good question, and I went on a bit of a deep dive looking at the scientific research on that topic, and the answer is fairly inconclusive. It seems like, generally speaking, if your chickens are just dust bathing out in a regular dust bath, like in the soil, making a little hole for themselves, that probably not. It probably isn't helping, because throwing that dust and soil around isn't really going to do much to help from a lice or mites perspective. They're very, very small, and they're going to be able to avoid the soil that's fluffing through the feathers. So it's probably not going to help. It doesn't seem like chickens change their dust bathing behavior depending on how many parasites they have. It's not the motivating factor for them to go and do it. So generally speaking, the answer is probably not. But if you add something to the substrate, to the material that you're providing for your chickens to have their little baths in, then yes, it can help. So if you add diatomaceous earth, remembering that diatomaceous earth only works effectively when it is dry, so the material they're using needs to remain dry and not moist in any way. You can add some sulfur. Sulfur does help to deter parasites, or you can add an actual mite powder or lice powder into the dust bath that you're providing. But unless you're doing something specific, that you're adding something specific, it does not seem like just a regular old dust bath is going to help your chickens manage their parasites. It is not the main reason that birds like to have their dust baths in the first place. It is all about that feather health and the socialization, and they really enjoy it. It kind of looks like they're giving themselves a little massage. So those are the reasons why they enjoy it so much. The parasite management thing is a bit of a question mark, but it's not the main reason. So how do you provide a good dust bath spot for your flock? Well, in my case, because my flock cruises around doing their thing, free range 24/7, I leave them to it. They make their own spots, and that's in the soil generally speaking, and that's what they do. I don't add anything into their spots for any kind of parasite management, because they could take that anywhere, and I don't want them putting any sort of insecticide in the general environment. So in that case, that's the easiest way to do it. Just leave your chickens to make their own spots. They'll dig themselves giant holes and have a great time. But if you're not in a situation when your flock can free range, or they can't free range all the time, remembering that chickens love dust bathing in the morning when the morning sun is coming through. So if they're not out running around at that time of day, what can you do to provide them a good spot? There are so many choices, but some of the main factors to consider are the location. Can you find a spot where that morning sun is coming, where they might have a little bit of shelter of some description, a bush or something that you can put into their run to provide them with a feeling of security? So that's where you can make a spot for them. And what is your spot going to consist of? If you have just a soil run, then that might be fine. They've got a spot, it stays mostly dry, and they can just go ahead and do that. Or you can put in a tray, you can put in like a little kiddie paddling pool full of what you're going to put in. You could use a car tire to contain the material inside it. There are so many choices. Just Google it or have a look on YouTube. Lots of people have all sorts of creative ideas about how to make a good dust bathing spot for their chickens in a run situation. What sort of material, what sort of substrate is best for chickens to use for their dust bathing activities? Well, there are a lot of choices. I would recommend just using soil. So either dig some out of your garden, or you can buy bags of topsoil. That, in my opinion, is the best, because it gives the best sort of substrate to get that oil off the feathers. But if that's not an option for you, or it's going to be too messy, or there's just a reason that you can't use soil, you can use sand, you can use peat moss, remembering that the idea is to provide something to absorb the oil. So if you're going to use sand, mixing a bit of peat moss in with it is a really great way to make a more soil-like kind of substance for them to roll around in. You could use soft clay, so clay that is dry and powdery. That would be great, but that might be hard to get. Chickens aren't too picky about what they choose to dust bathe in, but they do have preferences, and ultimately their preferences are what they expect instinctually to find, which is some kind of loose soil type substrate. So if you can target that, remembering that you're trying to allow them to absorb the oil off their feathers, then pretty much anything that they can fluff up in the air and wriggle through their feathers is going to make them happy. Provided you can keep their spot dry, you can add in diatomaceous earth to help them with their parasite management. You can throw in a few handfuls of sulfur powder, so that is the yellow sort of powder you can buy often for gardening purposes, and that will help to prevent parasites. So these are all the sort of options you can use for mixing stuff in if you're providing the dust bath yourself. And keeping it dry is great, but if it gets wet, I wouldn't worry too much. If you're not able to keep it under cover, putting drainage holes into whatever container you're going to use to contain the material is a really good idea, because then it's not just going to turn into a muddy soup and not serve the purpose. So if you're doing something like a kiddie paddling pool, drilling a whole bunch of holes into the bottom of it is going to allow any water to just drain out and keep it dry. But if you can make a little hood for it, or put it somewhere that it is undercover, then that's going to be great. But sometimes you've got competing priorities there. You might not be able to get it out into the morning sunshine, into their favorite spot, and also keep it under cover. So just think about what is going to work best for you in your own situation. Chickens dust bathing is one of those things that you might not think very much about. I mean, I know I didn't think a lot about it until I really did a deep dive on why do they actually do it. But turns out it's really important. I would love to see and hear about what kind of dust bathing solutions you've come up for in your flock, because I know there are lots and lots of creative ways that you can provide for your chickens' need to have a dust bath.